kind of means.
So let's cue up this paper here. This is a paper by Nicholas Steanopoulos. I'm not sure if he's related to George Stephanopoulos or if it's the same spelling as a Stepa or Stefa. But anyway, this is a paper which he examines how we understand and measure the power or lack thereof of different social groups within a democratic political system. So in this case, this is for Black people in America, as she's about to cue up in a little more context within the political powerlessness and some other groups to include poor whites and LGBTQ, but this focuses mostly on Black people. Conceptual clarification of the paper. The paper challenges traditional ways of defining political powerlessness, which have relied on factors like numerical size, electoral participation, or financial resources, which definitely impact Black people in America. Instead, it proposes that a group is relatively powerless if its overall policy preferences are less likely to be enacted compared to those of other, and she will say this, other similarly sized and classified groups. All right, so let's continue on here.
My first goal, and this is from the article, my first goal in this article then is to offer a definition of political powerlessness that makes theoretical sense. The definition I recommend is as follows. A group is relatively powerless if its aggregate policy preferences are less likely to be enacted than those of similarly sized classified groups. I'm going to say it one more time. A group is relatively powerless if its aggregate policy preferences are less likely to be enacted than those of similarly sized and classified groups. Listen, we don't even have to go to similarly sized groups. Let me tell you what we can do. We can look at groups that are actually smaller than us and figure out that they have more power than us. We don't have to even go far enough to say, hey, let's find a similarly sized group. We can look at every group because every group is smaller. We can look at every group that is smaller and say they have more power. We're a politically powerless group. Let's look at some of the other kind of criterion takeaways. I just want you to pay attention to this while we are around talking about Umar and his grit money and his daughter. And you still, well, maybe he did. Child, he was unserious a long time ago. You got to be crazy to still be taking that man and thinking about and talking more than 5 seconds about what he say. That's a 2-second chuckle. Yeah, I know he was always messed up and move on. First, the powerlessness factor stems from the 3rd paragraph of Carolene Products' famous 4th footnote.
So let's take a look at Carolene's Products, which is actually a famous court case and how it applies in this context as it relates to Black people, particularly in America, as she's discussing. A concrete example, and we'll go into it, and the 4th footnote is actually from the case. And we'll get into some examples after this. Let her finish talking here.
Relevant part, this paragraph states that more searching judicial inquiry may be needed when the operation of those political processes ordinarily to be relied upon to protect minorities is curtailed. It states that heightened scrutiny may apply when a minority wields less power than it would if the political system were functioning properly. If this political system were functioning properly, we would have power.
So basically stating that in a system of democracy, you have groups that have political power and you have groups that are politically powerless. So in this case, you have a system where, let's just, for lack of a better term, because we're trying to break this down to a level that most people can understand, there are people in a system you say, well, this is illegal, that is legal, and the law applies to everyone. It's kind of a all lives matter system. The most Americans will tell you that, well, if you just do the right thing, then the right thing will benefit you, right? But we find that as Black people in America, the system doesn't always apply to us, or the laws don't always apply to us, and somehow they're interpreted in different ways as it relates to Black people. And another quote from the actual paper, I don't believe that she'll go into it here. In the paper, it says, I find that Blacks, women, and the poor are relatively powerless at both government levels, while whites, men, and the non-poor wield more influence. Right? So there's an actual quote, and here's another quote. There is a hole at the heart of equal protection law. According to long-established doctrine, one of the factors that determine whether a group is a suspect class is the group's political powerlessness. So again, here is a law judging, or here is a legal ruling judging that the law really ain't fair for everyone. It just depends on the political clout of that particular group. Right. And I think what the sister is going into here is that, our lack of focus has contributed to the political powerlessness of our people, which is not wrong. And I wholeheartedly agree with this, right? So if your focus is Omar Johnson, right? If your focus is Stephen A. Smith, if your focus is LeBron James, and not to disparage those people, but in the political context, they kind of don't belong. Right. So if that's your preference, if that's what you're consuming on a day-to-day basis, even more than 50% of your time, that is going to impact the bottom line of your political power. And in this case, it has resulted in our political powerlessness. Very accurate for our people. Let's let her continue on this.
I will go further to say, if it was functioning properly, we would have wealth. So the fact that we stay powerless for generations with just minor little hiccups lets you know that we are a powerless group. Powerless groups don't have time to discuss, spend a lot of time discussing LeBron James and his rich son. Those are rich people. We don't have the delusional man who makes videos in the park. We don't got time for that either. Okay. Second, the mechanism that typically is thought to protect minorities is in the word pluralism. If innumerable groups endlessly are forming and breaking alliances as they jockey for advantage, then each group sometimes will find itself in the majority. No group will be a perennial loser if the winning coalition is reshuffled on each issue. But who is always a loser? No matter how the thing is reshuffled, throw your hand up because you're in that group. And third, pluralism does not always work as intended. Sometimes a group is unable to cut deals with its counterpart, so it ends up being outvoted on item after item. It is precisely in this situation, when a group loses unexpectedly often, that group is relatively powerless. Ladies.
There you go. Again, very well articulated and very well broken down by Sister Yvette.